Evolutionary Synthesis Center and Understanding Evolution, this is the Evolution in the News story for April 2008. I'm Kristen Jenkins. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, is a frightening new pathogen. Where did it come from? Evolutionarily speaking, we invited it to live with us. It turns out that we have a commensal or mutually beneficial relationship with it, along with many other bacteria. Most of the time, S. aureus lives on our skin, dining on oils, cells, and other resources our skin provides. This is a great environment which S. aureus doesn't want to share with other competing bacteria. So it defends its resources, and in the process keeps many nasty pathogens away from us. Unfortunately, if S. aureus manages to get past our skin, say in a cut, it can cause a nasty infection itself. Normally, an S. aureus infection can be cleared up with some mild antibiotics. However, like all bacteria, S. aureus has adapted to our abundant use of antibiotics. So, what's an antibiotic? The microbial world is a cutthroat, dog-eat-dog environment. Two major goals of microorganisms are to find something to eat and not be eaten themselves. Antibiotics are one line of defense against being eaten. They are toxic proteins that disable or destroy potential predators if they get too close. They punch holes in membranes, block metabolism, and otherwise interfere with general functions. But evolution moves fast in the microbial world. Because of their short life cycles, bacteria develop adaptations to antibiotics rapidly. Initially, this occurs by random mutation, but effective adaptations spread through the microbial community via both vertical and horizontal gene transfer. Vertical gene transfer is just passage from parent to offspring, but horizontal gene transfer allows different species of bacteria to trade adaptations. Methicillin-resistant S. aureus are often resistant to multiple antibiotics. One in particular, vancomycin, is a powerful antibiotic of last resort. Staphylococcus aureus picked up resistance to vancomycin by horizontal transfer from a bacterial resident of our guts, Enterococcus faecalis. Horizontal gene transfer allows transfer of genes across species boundaries, speeding the spread of advantageous adaptations. Dr. Christina Burch at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, studies the evolution of bacteria and viruses, specifically development of virulence, the ability to infect other cells. She is joining us to talk about bacterial adaptation to antibiotics and some practical approaches to preventing infection by disease-causing bacteria.
In the example we're talking about today, MRSA, or Methicillin-Resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the story is a little bit different, okay? Staphylococcus aureus is not a bacteria that is normally a pathogen like strep throat or tuberculosis. Staph aureus lives on your skin normally, and so we call this a commensal bacteria or a normal flora, right? Staph aureus lives on your skin, it eats dead skin cells, and it basically occupies space. So it's providing a service in that by occupying that space, it's keeping out bacteria that could infect you, right? So normally, Staph aureus is providing a service when it lives on the surface of your skin. It doesn't normally cause any infection. The only time it causes an infection is when you have a pretty serious wound, or when you end up in the hospital and you have a surgery that creates a wound, right? And sometimes Staph aureus ends up in a place where it doesn't belong. So it might end up in the bloodstream and cause an infection there, right, where your body doesn't know how to handle it. Okay, so why does Staph aureus evolve resistance to antibiotics? Okay, the problem here is that Staph aureus lives on your skin all the time. right? So when you take an antibiotic for strep throat or anything else that infects you, that Staph aureus that lives on your skin is getting exposed to that antibiotic. That means that Staph aureus gets exposed to lots more antibiotics, probably even than pathogens do. Okay? So if you've been taking a lot of antibiotics, it's quite likely that commensal bacteria like Staph aureus that live on you will have acquired resistance to some antibiotics. There are two ways that resistance in commensal bacteria like MRSA can be problematic. The first case is after a surgery, so I mentioned that before, that when you have a serious wound like you get in surgery, bacteria like Staph aureus or like our gut bacteria can end up in the bloodstream where they cause real problems. Normally, we would treat that infection that results in the bloodstream with an antibiotic. It would clear it really fast and this wouldn't be a problem. But if your commensals have evolved antibiotic resistance, then when they get into the bloodstream and you treat with the antibiotic, it doesn't work, right? And you can have really severe consequences in that case. The other way that evolution of antibiotic resistance in your commensal bacteria can be a problem is that those commensal bacteria live with you all the time, right? Once they've got resistance, that resistance will probably last for quite a while. And then when you are infected by a pathogenic bacteria, that pathogen might live in a part of your body together with your commensals, right? And then this thing called horizontal transfer, where genes can be passed between one type of bacteria to another one, can be a problem. So your commensal bacteria has this resistance allele now, this resistance gene, and it can pass that to the pathogen. And then the pathogen becomes quite a problem because you can't treat it with the antibiotic. Since I know something about the evolution of antibiotic resistance in bacteria, I'm particularly bothered by the recent trend of putting antibacterials in products like hand soap. Antibacterials are just antibiotics that have been labeled with a different name, and maybe you should be alarmed that we're putting this hand soap with an antibiotic in it onto our hands every day where our commensal bacteria are going to encounter it. Okay, the first problem is that adding the antibacterial to the hand soap doesn't seem to add any benefit. So if you ask people to wash their hands with soap that doesn't have antibacterial, and ask another set of people to wash their hands with soap to which they've added an antibacteria, they wash their hands like we all do, put some soap on, rub them together for about 6 seconds, and then rinse it off. 6 seconds isn't a lot of time for that antibacterial to do anything. And when they count the bacteria that have been removed from both of those sets of people's hands, it didn't make a difference whether the antibacterial was in the hand soap or not. The same number of bacteria were removed with the regular soap as were removed when they added the antibacterial. So that's one problem, but maybe that's a smaller problem. The second problem is that, again, because your commensal bacteria are encountering this antibacterial all the time, you wonder whether that is going to select for the evolution of resistance to that antibacterial, right? And this is a particular worry because we know a little bit about the mechanism by which such resistance can evolve. So one way that you see resistance to antibiotics in general evolve is that bacteria make a thing called an efflux pump on the surface of their cells, and that pump works to pump out toxins from the cell, right? Antibiotics are a toxin, and some of them can get pumped out through these efflux pumps. The way that a bacteria can evolve resistance to an antibiotic then is to increase the number of those pumps that it makes, right? If it makes more pumps, it can pump the antibiotic back out of the cell faster. Okay, and resistance to the antibacterial that's in hand soaps can work this way, right? That a mutation arises that causes the cell to make more of those pumps, and so they pump that antibacterial back out of the cell a lot faster and the bacteria survive. The problem with this type of resistance mechanism is that those pumps are not very specific. So they pump out that antibacterial, but it turns out that they pump out a lot of different toxins, including a lot of medically relevant antibiotics. So the worry is that if this antibacterial that's in hand soap were to cause the evolution of resistance to that antibacterial, that you might get resistance to other medically important antibiotics coming along for the ride.
For more information about this story, including links to primary and popular literature and classroom resources, visit the National Evolutionary Synthesis Center website or the Understanding Evolution website. More stories are available in the Evolution in the News archives on either site. The National Evolutionary Synthesis Center is funded by the National Science Foundation to promote research in biological evolution.